welcome to another Lawn Fawn video. Today we are so excited to be introducing a bunch of brand new products. Here we're starting off with Fangtastic Friends and its coordinating dies. We also have a Fangtastic Friends add-on and coordinating dies for that. These are our full moon dies and also our nighttime sky stencil. So let's go ahead and check these out. First up, we're going to take a look at Fangtastic Friends, and this stamp set is so cute. I am just in love with these bats, and we have them in a bunch of different positions so that you can create cute scenes with them. We have flying ones, we have ones that are hanging upside down as well, and those are so cute and fun. We have a fun little moth that's really great for putting into the scene. We also have a hanging spider and a little creepy crawly spider. And then we have some great branches. So I love putting these in the scene and then having the bats fly around them or having the spider and the bats hang off of them. We have a little Halloween trick-or-treat bucket and a cute little heart and a trio of stars and a single star stew so you can fill your nighttime sky with stars. There's a little solid star as well. And then there's some great sentiments. So we have some tiny little sentiments that say boo, eek, happy Halloween. And then we have a larger Happy Halloween sentiment, and then some other really great punny sentiments. We have I love hanging out with you, smile, hang in there, that's one of my favorites, have a fantastic day, fang you very much, and let's hang out. And one of the things that I love about the sentiments in this set is that there's ones that are great for Halloween, but there's ones that are great for year-round too. So these bats are just adorable little critters that you can put on any card. So we're going to show you a Halloween version and some non-Halloween versions as well in this video. Now next up, we're going to start adding color to these bats. And there's a lot of fun different ways to color these bats in. And right now I'm using some cool gray markers. Gray markers look great in any shade of gray. Also, blue, violet, purpley markers look really, really cool with these bats. You can even get creative and use greens or other things as well. So we're going to be kind of mixing and matching different colors here in the video so you can see different ways to color in these adorable bats. Now I like to add a little shade kind of on the edge of the wings and then blend it out dark, medium to light throughout the cute little bat. And there's just something about that I think looks so nice, almost like the moonlight might be hitting the tops of their wings. Now for these next hanging bats here, which I love these little guys, they're just kind of hugging, it's so sweet. I'm going to use the same cool gray markers, but this time just make them a little bit lighter. So you can kind of play around with your shades. So if I'm using a really dark background, sometimes I'll like to have my bats be a little bit of a lighter gray, so they really kind of stand out. So here you can see I'm just doing some kind of shading around kind of the rounds of their faces, and once again at the bottoms of their bat wings and underneath their chins, and then we're just going to blend that out. Now for these next bats, I'm going to be switching into a neutral gray. And then later on when we show you the Fangtastic Friends add-on, we're going to be doing a blue violet. So now we've got our neutral gray. So it's just a little bit of a different color and really it just depends on whatever you might have in your stash, whether you're using Copic markers like we are here or colored pencils or anything. Any shade of gray looks really, really great on these bats. Now for this guy, I did something a little bit different. I added the shading all around the edges of the wings, and then I kept the wings light in the center. So just a little bit of a different look, and we're going to do the same thing here with his face, kind of a little bit of shadow all the way around the edges, and then blend that out. And then for this last little guy here, we're going to be doing that same neutral gray, just to kind of play around with different markers that I might have in my stash and see what my favorite way to color these bats in is. And of course, some little rosy cheeks. It makes them so cute. Now for the moth, I'm going to be using some light browns here, but I like using purples on the moth too, or whatever color kind of makes it kind of pop in my scene. And then for these little spiders, we're going to be using some warm grays. And I like adding little dots to the spider. There's something about it that makes it kind of spookier for Halloween with those little dotted details on them. Because I'm imagining these branches to be in a nighttime scene, I'm going to use some E70s markers. I have a tendency to use E30s or E50s, and the E70 markers are newer to me. I didn't always have these. I got them fairly recently, and I think that looks really, really cool for kind of a nighttime scene. Any kind of darker brown I think would look really, really great with these. And then I thought a nice pop of green on the leaves would just be a nice pop of color on there. And then of course our little trick-or-treat bucket needs to have a nice bright orange. We'll add some yellow for the stars and a little pink heart as well. Next, we're going to take a look at the Fangtastic Friends add-on. And what I love about this add-on set is that it works great on its own or they work really great together. So in this set, we have 2 more bats and a spider moving in the opposite direction. And then there's this cute little banner that's kind of a pennant banner and then a banner that you can put sentiments in that those little bats can almost like hold or kind of be showing off. And then there's a little grouping of stars that's really great for creating a scene. I like putting them in the corners of my card, kind of like this, so that you can fill in stars coming in from the edge. You can also keep stamping it and have a ton of stars on your page. This set also has a great sentiment. It says, "Have a very happy day," and then also a ta-da, since that's what those little bats look like they're doing. They're kind of showing off their sentiment. And so now we're going to add some color to the bats. Now I always use this kind of rosy pink combo for all of the bats' ears, but now I'm going to use those blue violet markers. So a really dark purple kind of sometimes has this gray feel to it, and I think it looks really, really cool on the bats, and it might be a fun way to use some markers or colored pencils or whatever you may have in your stash that you don't use as often. These are colors I don't use quite as often. I think they look so cool on the bats, and they actually ended up being my favorite bats that I colored in. So there you can see I'm just going back and kind of adding more shadow around the wings to really help them pop. And I love the little shadow under the wing kind of onto his belly. And then I'm going to repeat the same kind of look on this bat so that they both coordinate. So now we're just going to blend that out. And then you'll see I'll come back in with the dark marker and kind of darken up the edges just because I thought it needed a little more contrast. And then I'm just going to blend that right back into our cute little bat. And then here's a comparison between all the different bats, the cool gray, the neutral grays, the darker or lighter bats, and then the blue violet. And you can see each one of those is a different look, and I think they all look really, really awesome. Next, we'll add some rosy cheeks to these bats too, and then use some neutral grays on the spider. So we used warm grays before, and now it's neutral grays, and adding those little dots on the spider. I just love that little texture. And then for this banner, we're just going to be using some kind of fun Halloween-y feeling colors. So we've got the orange and the green, some turquoise, and some purple, and I just think that's a fun little combo. And then I'm just going to use some light gray markers to add a little bit of shadow to this banner. I love this banner because it's great for using for these sets, but honestly, it's great for combining with other sentiments that you might have in your stash as well. Next up, we have some yellow stars, and then our Fangtastic Friends add-on is all colored in. Now here are the coordinating dies for Fangtastic Friends, which you can bend apart at the tabs or use your wire snips to separate. We're going to take the coordinating dies, line them up with the stamped images, hold them in place with some low-tack tape, run it through a die cut machine, and you'll have some beautiful cut images every single time. And look how cute and fun these bats are. I am just loving them. All of these elements are so much fun to mix and match. So that little guy there that was hanging upside down, you can also have him going right side up. You can take the little bats and spider and hang them off the tree branches, which I think is such a cute look. And then the other little spiders can walk along the tree branches. The different bats can also hold the trick-or-treat bucket, which is one of my most favorite looks. And the little moth and the stars can be flying around in the sky. Now next up, we have the Fangtastic Friends add-on coordinating dies, which you can bend apart at the tabs or use your wire snips to separate. Once again, we're going to line these up with our stamped and colored images, hold it in place with some low-tack tape, run it through the die cut machine, and we'll have perfectly cut out images. And here are all of the images from this set. I just love those two cute little banners, and those little bats are just so fun. So you can see here how they can hold the little banner kind of up in the sky, and then they can also hold the sentiment banner as well. So there you can see that. And I love that the die cuts out a bunch of stars all at once, so it's really easy to add them into your scenes. Now here I wanted to bring in the Fangtastic Friends to show how you can mix and match these stamp sets together. So these cute little bats can all be hanging out on a card, and it just gives you more design and cool fun ideas. I love the look of the little bats hanging off of the sentiment banner. I think that's just so much fun. And speaking of the sentiment banner, you can use it with sentiments from the add-on or the Fangtastic Friends stamp set, or really any sentiment in your stash. But we're going to go ahead and stamp the "Have a Fantastic Day" sentiment into the banner, and now that's going to be ready to put on a card in just a little bit. Next up, we have our full moon dies, which comes with this awesome full moon, and then these cute little pieces to create a bat, and then some fun little sparkly stars to put in your nighttime sky scene. Now, this die creates a stitched opening and a full moon die with these cool little embossed craters, which look absolutely amazing. And we're going to be showing you a fun technique with these craters a little later on in the video. To create the bat, all you need to do is layer the two pieces together. The other thing that you could do is take a white gel pen and color in his little fangs so that he had white little teeth. And I just think he's just so adorable, and you can layer him over the moon and create really cute cards with that die cut bat, or of course the Fangtastic Friends stamped bats as well. And then those little stars are really great for adding into your scene. Next, we're going to take a look at the nighttime sky stencil. And the stencil is really great because, of course, you get all the great elements that we have on the left, but you also get that interior moon piece that you can use as a mask. So you can see it's just the inside of the stencil right there. And we'll be showing you lots of cool ways to use this stencil here at the beginning of the video and then throughout the video and other videos that we're doing as well. So the first thing we're going to do is create a full moon. So I like to lay that right on my card. I'm using one of these magnet boards here and just have some magnets holding my stencil in place, but you could use some low tack tape to hold your stencil in place as well. And then I've put some post-its around just to protect my edges to make sure I only get ink on the moon area. Now, my favorite color to do the moons in is manatee ink because it's this really great light gray. But any gray ink looks really, really great, or even some browns can look really great with this moon too. And Shari's going to show us a really fun idea with the moon later on in the video with a fun, unique color. So now we're going to peel up our stencil, and you could just stop right here and have this beautiful moon. But we're going to add some of the extra details that are included in this set. So I'm going to ink up another moon again. And then we're going to move on to using some other parts of the stencil. So there's these really cool little craters, and we have smaller craters or larger craters, which you can actually layer together if you would like, or use separately depending on the look you're going for. So here you can see I'm just going to line those craters up onto my moon, and right now I'm using the same exact ink. This is that manatee ink, and we're layering more ink on top, which is going to make it appear darker, even though we've just used one shade of ink. And how gorgeous is that? Then next, we're going to start off with another plain moon, but we're going to use the larger craters. So I'm going to line those up, once again, using my Post-it notes to protect the edges from all the other little stencil elements. And we're going to ink it up with the same color ink, the manatee ink. And we're just going to go right over with those larger craters. And those are going to look really cool. I think it would be fun to put some like stencil paste and one of the fairy dust maybe with the glitter would look really fun on the moon too. Now we're going to take out that mask piece, and we're going to put that mask right on top of the moon. So that's the one that comes from the inside of the stencil. We're going to layer that right on top, and then we're just going to add some magnets to hold it in place. And this is going to protect our moon as we create a night sky. So right now I'm starting off with some chipped sapphire distress ink because I just think it's such a great nighttime sky color. And so I'm just adding that color and kind of coming in from the edges. And then I'm going to add some black soot on the edges to give it more of that nighttime sky look and then go back to the blue. And here you can see that I'm kind of getting closer and closer to this moon, but I want there to be a glow coming out from the moon. So what I'm going to do is actually remove those magnets, and I'm going to use some removable adhesive. I'm just going to add it right to my moon right there. And then we can use that to hold our stencil in place. And the reason I'm doing this is that the magnets were kind of getting in the way of my inking. Even if I just use one magnet, I'm not the most careful inker. So by using the removable adhesive, and then I'm also holding the stencil in place with my fingers, I really didn't need to do that, but I guess I'm a paranoid stenciler or something. I was worried about the stencil moving. So I'm just inking on that circular stencil and then going off onto my card with tumbled glass ink, which is a light blue. And then I'm coming back in with that chipped sapphire color over top of it. And by doing that and going back and forth from the colors, we're going to get this really cool glow going off of that moon. And that stencil is right there protecting that beautiful moon that we inked earlier. And doesn't that look so cool? I just have so much fun playing with this stencil. And the next thing we have are these clouds. And I love these clouds because they're perfect for kind of going over the moon to give you that spooky nighttime Halloween-y sky look. But the other cool thing is I just love these clouds. So I've been using them in the background of other cards as well that are like springy cards or fall cards because they're just a great cloud. But right now we're just going to go over that right over top of the moon. And how fun is that? And I love that there are 3 different sides of clouds. That way you can kind of get a fun variation. I also really like the look of the cloud overlapping the moon and then kind of going off of the edge of the paper because it makes it feel like there's more clouds kind of coming in, covering that moon. So now we're going to line up that smaller cloud, once again putting all my Post-its in place to make sure I don't get ink anywhere I'm not supposed to, and then we can lift that up and reveal this really cool cloud scene. Now, last but not least, there's one more thing in this stencil. This stencil is packed with so many cool things, and there's these fun little kind of nighttime star sparkle things. They kind of make me feel like a magical Halloween night. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use one of these tiny little finger brushes, and I'm taking some sunflower ink, which is a yellow ink, and then just kind of overlaying those magical stars over top of the moon and just kind of playing around with where they're placed. There's two little bundles of stars, smaller ones and bigger ones. You can also keep adding more and more of these stars or little sparkles together to kind of have more and more sparkles too. So I just think it's fun for setting that magical Halloween night. So here you can see I'm adding more sparkles to the one at the top. So it's going to look like one big extended sparkle area, which I think is really fun. And so here is a look at all of these different nighttime sky stencil ideas. I love that you can create all these cool moons. There's those great clouds, there's the sparkles, the craters, the masks. There's so many cool things. And now it is time to start creating cards using all of these products. And we're going to be starting up with the Slimline card. And so here we have one of the scalloped Slimline dies. And I've die cut that from some white cardstock, and I'm actually trimming the scallops off. And the reason I'm doing this is I'm going to ink blend a sky onto this piece and then eventually layer it over a full scallop piece so that I'll have a white scalloped area and then in the center have purple clouds. And so here you can see how these two pieces are going to layer eventually. But first up, we're going to start with the piece that we trimmed down, and we're going to do some really cool inking. And right now we are recreating a card by Tammy, and oh my goodness, this sky Tammy created just blew me away. And she's using the Cloudy Stencil, which is such a great stencil because it works literally all year round, and it makes a really cool Halloween sky. And so we're going to start off with some Dusty Concord and Milled Lavender inks. Now eventually I'm going to bring a brighter purple in, and I'll show you how I do that in a little bit. But I've got my darker purple coming out at the bottom of the clouds and the lighter purple at the bottom. So there you can see I've got my dark purple and light, and then I'm bringing in some black soot ink, adding a little bit of black soot, and then going back over it with the purple. Now I'm going to continue on to create more clouds. I've got the dark purple, the light purple, the black soot, and then back to the dark purple again to kind of blend that black ink. Now, here is where I realized I wanted the sky to be brighter. And so that's when I brought in some wilted violet. And that's something I love about stencils. I can take that stencil, line it right back up with the cloud, and just layer over that wilted violet color. And you can see as I do that, it really brightens up the sky. So now I had kind of committed to an idea. So I'm doing my dark purple, my light purple, my black soot, my dark purple again, and then I'm coming in with that brighter wilted violet over top so that all of my clouds are going to match versus starting over again. And honestly, once I got into a rhythm of it, I just kind of kept going. But if I were to redo this sky, I would just do the wilted violet into the milled lavender, and I wouldn't bring the Dusty Concord in at all. So there I've got my black soot again, and then that wilted violet kind of bringing in that brightness. And so I'm just repeating this idea all the way down this beautiful night sky. Next up, we're going to add some texture to the sky, and we're going to start off first with some water. And I am going to be doing a technique that Rebecca here at Lawnfawn has come up with, and I love it. And that's picking up water or paint or whatever it might be, and then tapping your brush actually on the acrylic block. So the brush has the water on it, and then I'm tapping the acrylic block, and it makes these very tiny little splatters, as you can see on the card. So I'm just taking a paper towel and drying that water up, and now we're going to do some white splatters, and we're also going to do some black watercolor as well. So we'll have the water spots, the white spots, and the black spots. So we're going to start off with white, and I'm going to do that same technique again where I'm going to tap the edge of the acrylic block. And I don't know what it is about it, but every time I do that, I get these perfect tiny little splatters. So definitely try that, and thank you to Rebecca for that awesome technique idea. So now here I have some black watercolor paint. I'm going to pick that up with the paintbrush and once again tap the edge of my acrylic block, and that paint's going to fly off of the edge of the paintbrush and create some splatters. Here you'll see I went in with my finger because I wanted a couple larger splatters, and by using my finger I get a larger splatter versus tapping the edge of that acrylic block. So we went ahead and let that whole background dry, added some tape runner to it, and now we're going to layer it onto that stitch scallop piece, and it's a perfect match since we had trimmed off the edges earlier. Now, next up, we're going to be using a moon that comes from All the Clouds and our Fangtastic Friends stamp set. And we're going to be creating a really cute scene. And there's something about this set that I think just looks so cute on Slimline cards because you can really fill the whole scene in with these cute bats and branches. So there we've got a branch and we're going to layer on that cute little bat. And there's a nice mix here. We're doing some tape runner for the branches, for example, and then some things are popped like the bat or the treat bucket with some foam. Then we're going to layer these little bats hanging off that branch and then of course a spider. Going to kind of put the spider on there, see where it looks nice, and then we can just trim off any of the extra and that'll tuck right behind that branch. Now it's time to work on the sentiment, and this is going to be a mix of stamping and die cut letters. So here we have our Oliver's ABCs. We've die cut that from white cardstock and black, and we're going to layer these pieces together so that there's this cool little shadow. So the black die cut letters are just being layered a little bit over to the right, and that shadow is going to really help those letters pop from what is a pretty busy background. So this is creating a custom sentiment here, which was such a cute idea by Tammy, and it's going to say Batty for you, which is just adorable. So we're going to layer all of those letters on. And then to get the for you part, we're actually going to be using another new stamp set. So first we'll add a cute little bat and some more accessories. And then we're going to stamp out this sentiment that comes from our brand new Simply Fall sentiments. And it says, so grateful for you, but we're just going to use the for you part. So we're going to stamp the whole thing out, die cut it here with a sentiment banner. And then once we have that die cut, we can just take some scissors and trim off the so grateful part, and then we're able to create this fun custom sentiment. Then once we have that sentiment banner layered onto the card, we can fill in the rest of the scene. So we're going to add another branch and then another cute little bat. I just think they're just so fun. I love them so much. And some more branches here and one of those cute little spiders. Now, one of the really great things about the stamp set is there's these adorable stars, but when you die cut them, it cuts them into a bunch of individual stars. So when you stamp them, they're in a group, but when you die cut them, you get individual stars. And that's really great for adding these into scenes and kind of filling in your sky. So we're adding drops of glue and then just picking up the stars and layering them onto the drops of glue. Next, we have a slimline card base here that is 3.5 by 8.5, and we're going to layer that on to the back of this card, and this card is all done. And isn't it so cute? I can't tell you how much fun it is to create that fun, spooky Halloween nighttime sky, and those little bats. The scenes are just so much fun to make. And so, of course, we're going to create another fun card, another recreation of a card by Tammy, and we're going to die cut a stitched rectangle here, and we're going to be doing some inking. So this is Twisted Citron, which is a nice bright green, and we're going to start off in the middle of this card, having our light green there, and then we're going to move on to Mode Lawn, which is a darker green, and we're going to come in from the edges, and then we'll blend that out with the light green in the center. Then to darken it up and make it feel a little bit more like a nighttime sky, we're going to bring in some black soot distress ink. And so you'll see once we add that black on the edge, it just is magic. It just makes it perfect. And so we're going to layer that along the edge, and then we'll move back into the dark green and then into the light green to blend it all out. And then it's time to start using the nighttime sky stencil, and we're going to be using all of the different size clouds. And so I'm using some Post-it note tape to just cover up some of those smaller elements by the clouds, like the craters and little stars. And then I'm going to use some larger Post-its to cover up the rest of it, just to make sure I don't get ink in the wrong places. And then I'm going to be using some Yeti ink, which is a white pigment ink. And that's going to be going over top of this cool green nighttime sky. And you'll see how awesome it looks. So we're going to ink over it and then lift up the cool cloud. And doesn't that look amazing? And so as we build up the sky, I'm going to have some clouds going off the edge, some clouds more in the center, to just really make it look like this continuous night sky. And so I just filled up the whole background here. You can see I'm adding a little bit, just a little edge of the card to finish off the whole scene. And doesn't that look really, really cool? I love the clouds layered over top. Now we're going to do a similar splattering technique that we did earlier. We're going to use the black watercolor and we're going to use the white paint. This is Copic white, opaque white, but you can use a white acrylic paint. I just think it's just such a fun technique. It always looks so cool on backgrounds. And once again, we're going to pick that up with some water with a paintbrush and tap the edge of the acrylic block to create some really tiny little splatters. And then we'll do the same thing with the black watercolor paint. And that's just going to create some really cool texture. And I always think it's just so much fun to do. So here we've die cut a largest stitched rectangle. This original one was cut with an outside in stitched rectangle, which is going to give it this really great little skinny border with double stitching, which is a really, really fun look. And then we're going to take out the new giant trick or treat die. I love this die so much. And so we've got it cut out of white and black again, and we're going to layer them just like we did earlier on the card. And when you have darker nighttime sky scenes like this, adding that little white little edge there just really helps the whole sentiment pop. So we're going to layer that right into the center. And doesn't that look so pretty, especially with the lighter color in the middle? It just looks like this really cool kind of creepy glow. So here we have some images that are from both Fangtastic Friends and the Fangtastic add-on. And so here you can see that we've got the banner that we stamped earlier with the sentiment. We're going to layer that at the bottom. And then the Fangtastic Friend add-on bat is doing this whole ta-da thing and kind of showing off the banner. And then we're going to layer the little pennants underneath, the little bunting. I think that's just such a fun pop of color on this card. Next, we'll add another bat, and then we're going to add some of the elements really kind of tucked into the letters of the giant trick or treat. And that's one of the things I love about all the giant word dies. It's a really fun way to create cute scenes with your stamp images. So for example, we're going to have the spider hanging off of the T. So we're going to layer that right in, and then we can just trim off the little excess that was at the top. And now we're going to do the same technique with the stars. So once again, the die cuts out the one stamped images into a bunch of individual stars. So you can add little drops of glue and then just layer stars into the scene. And it's just such a fun look. Then next, we're going to take a standard size card base at 5.5 by 4.25. We're going to add some tape runner to that and then layer the whole card on top. And now this card is all done. And oh my goodness, it was so much fun to create. I love the ink clouds in the background and the giant trick or treat with all of the cute bats around it. Oh, it's just so awesome. So next up, we're creating a card inspired by a card by Grace, and it was using these adorable bats in a non-Halloween card. So we're going to be starting off with the full moon die, and we've die cut this out of some fog cardstock, and it has those really cool embossed craters on them. And the embossing is really awesome, but one of my favorite techniques to do with the embossing is to use some light gray markers and just kind of round the little craters. So I'm using some light gray, and then I'm using the colorless blender to blend out that gray into nothing toward the center of the craters. And it really helps the moon just come to life. It looks so cool. So there's the colorless blender. I'm just blending out all of those edges. And you'll see as it dries pretty light. So when you marker onto the colored cardstock, you'll see that it dries really light and it's looking really cool. And then I'm going to take some pumice stone distress ink. It's just kind of a lighter, warmy gray color. And I'm just inking a little bit of the moon, not the whole thing, but just kind of creating a cool moon look. Now next up we have some brand new paper, and it's the Let It Shine Starry Skies paper, and I'm obsessed with this paper. It is so gorgeous. The foil on it is so pretty, and so we've die cut that with a stitched rectangle. And you could use the paper just like this, but I really love the idea of inking the edges of these foil papers. I don't know what it is, but it just makes them even more magical. So we're using milled lavender, which is a really light purple, on the edge of this light blue, and it looks really, really cool. And then later on videos, we'll ink the edges of some of the other colors in the collection too. I just think it looks really neat, and it makes that gold foil just look gorgeous. So here we have the moon, and what I'm going to do is put the moon kind of exactly where I want it to be on the card, and then I'm going to die cut it again with the stitched rectangle. That way the moon has this stitch detail on it as well. So I'm just lining that right up, holding it in place with the tape, and running it through the die cut machine. And now we can layer it onto that starry sky background, and because it has a stitching, I just feel like it really integrates it into the whole card and just looks so cool. Next up, we're going to work on the sentiment, and that's going to be love hanging out with you. And we're going to be using this die cut Scripty love, which I feel like brings some kind of fun levity into the card. And so I die cut the love from some white cardstock, and we're going to use that same milled lavender ink just to ink it a little bit because the white felt too bright. So just by adding a little bit of that purple, I feel like it ties in the purple that we inked on the starry paper. Now we're going to layer that over some black shimmer cardstock to be a really cool shadow. Then for the sentiment, we're going to be using one of the sentiments from Fangtastic Friends. So we're going to prep some black cardstock with an anti-static powder tool, and then we're going to stamp out hanging out with you, and then we're going to go ahead and sprinkle on some white heat embossing powder, top that off, and then heat it up with the heat tool. And then we'll use our paper trimmer to just trim that out using some scissors there on the edges so that we have this kind of nice little label that we've created that can go underneath that die cut word love. Next, we're going to take out Fangtastic Friends and stamp color and die cut a bunch of the images. In this case, coloring the bats a little bit in a lighter gray so that we kind of keep with this whole lighter color scheme. Now here I decided to layer the love die cut on another piece just to make it pop a little bit more and give it a little bit more height. So we're going to layer that on there and then underneath finish up the sentiment with our heat emboss sentiment. So it says love hanging out with you. And then we can add a cute little bat there up into the moon. And then we'll start to fill in the rest of the scene using a lot of foam squares so that everything really pops. So we're going to layer this cute little bat hanging off the branch. And then add the smaller branch there over to the left and then layer in another little hanging bat duo. Of course, we have to put a lot of the hanging bats here to go along with our hanging out with you sentiment. Going to add a little moth into the sky there, and then we're going to have the spider hanging off that little sentiment banner. And I think that's just such a cute look when the spider is hanging off the sentiment or hanging off the branches. I don't know why, but I just think it's adorable. And then we're going to add one little last bat there into the center. And last but not least, this card needs a little more sparkle. So we're going to take those sparkle dies that are included in the full moon die set and we're going to die cut those out of some yellow shimmer cardstock and then just add some sparkles into the sky. And there's something about that pop of yellow that just kind of brightens up the whole card and just brings it all in together. So we're just going to add those little sparkles into the sky, and then we'll take a standard size card base that's at 5.5 by 4.25, and then we're going to layer this whole beautiful card on top, and this card is all done. And I love that we've taken these Fangtastic Friends and we've taken them from Halloween to a super cute everyday card, and they are just so much fun with those gold stars in the background. I just love it. And then here's a look at those 3 cards. I love the 3 different skies. They look so cool together. And next up, you're in for another cool sky treat because Shari is going to be using that moon stencil and doing something awesome with it.
The main centerpiece of my card today is going to be a beautiful ink blended full moon, and I'm going to be using the nighttime sky stencil to create my moon. I'm going to start out with placing that open circle centered on my card panel. This is cut from some Bristol cardstock, and I'm starting out with mustard seed distress ink to fill in that whole circle with that bright yellow. Next, I'm going to pull in some fossilized amber, and I'm just going to ink the edge, the top edge, with this slightly darker yellow. So it's very subtle, the darker yellow and then that lighter yellow at the bottom. But it does give it a little bit of shadow and definition. Next, I'm going to line up the circle dots that line up with the moon, and I'm going to ink blend those with wild honey. And I'm going to switch over to a brush on this one to make sure I get into those openings nicely. Sometimes that's hard to do with a foam, and actually I had a domed foam, which makes it a little bit more difficult with that shape. And I'm just using my Post-it note tape to kind of block off where I might go off the edge. So now I have this beautiful moon. Next, I can pull out the mask that comes in this stencil set. So this allows you to cover up your moon and then you can ink around it. So I'm using my media mat for this so that I can put a magnet directly on that circle and hold it in place, and I don't need any tape. I'm actually going to put 2 magnets to make sure it's really well held down and it doesn't shift around. Now, it shifted there because I bumped it, so I'm going to have to be a little bit more careful not to bump it. And then I'm starting out with my lightest color of the sky. This is Twisted Citron. I'm going to make this kind of blue-green sky, and I thought that this worked well to show kind of the glow around my yellow moon. So I will just go all the way around it. I added a 3rd magnet to my stack in case you didn't see that. And I'm just going all the way around it with that Twisted Citron to create the start of my glowing moon. Next, I'm pulling in Lucky Clover Distress ink. And I'm going to tap it off a little bit so I don't get quite as saturated. And I'm going to pull that in from the edges and start to pull it onto my Twisted Citron. So you can see there I've kind of halved that Twisted Citron area with the Lucky Clover. But I'm going to go back and blend between the two so that it kind of blends out the line that was created when I pulled that Lucky Clover in. I keep bumping my magnets with my brush. So now I have this really nice blend between the two. I'll move on to my next color, which is Uncharted Mariner. And that was a new foam, so I'm just getting it nice and inky. And this is going to work its way out to dark on the outside. And I'm just going to use my scrap piece of paper to hold it down a little bit. I'm an aggressive ink blender, so sometimes it moves a lot. And I'm just putting that Uncharted Mariner all along the bottom, filling it all the way to the edge below where that Lucky Clover was. And then I'll add some to those upper corners as well. So you can see how I'm kind of working my way out from the moon with the lightest color to the darkest. And I just work my way back and forth to blend out the line between the colors. And then finally, I don't think a night sky or a spooky sky is ever complete without a little bit of black soot right around the edges. So that's what I'm doing here. I've got some black soot, so I'm just doing those top corners there, the bottom corners and the bottom, and I'll just blend between that black soot and that Uncharted Mariner. So you can see I have this really cool nighttime sky that goes from that Twisted Citron out to the black. And you'll see when I pull off the mask where I've masked off the moon, it's a perfect glow around the moon. Now I'm going to go ahead and stamp out my sentiment. I'm doing this on a fancy wavy banner, and I just took the sentiment from Fangtastic Friends and curved it to match the curve of the banner. I'm stamping that in some embossing ink and adding some white embossing powder. So I'll just heat this up with my heat tool till that embossing powder is all melted and I get that nice bright white sentiment on that black sentiment banner. Now I've just placed this here just for placement. It's not glued down just yet, but I'm going to do some clouds using some Ranger texture paste. Now you could use lawnfawn paste. I'm using this Ranger texture paste because it's got a matte finish, and I'm going to kind of add some texture to the paste with my palette knife here. So I'm putting a layer on first, and I also like that you can kind of see the colors through this one as well. And then I'm going to go back and kind of be a little rough with it and give it some texture. Now I did let this particular cloud dry before I moved on to my other two clouds, because you can see that the stencil is going to overlap that cloud. These two I'm going to add the paste through at the same time. So I have these thicker areas and these thinner areas, and it makes it look translucent in some areas and more opaque in others because of the different thicknesses of the paste. Now once those are dry, I'm just taking my mask and I'm just laying it over my moon so I can add some gold splatters. You could have done this before you did the clouds, but I didn't. So either way, you can lay this over and protect the moon, and that will keep your splatters just to the sky around it. So in my case, because I've done my clouds, I'm going to have some splatters on my clouds as well. So I'm just using that gold metallic watercolor, flicking it off a block, and now I have my splatters all around, but my moon is still nice and clean. So once my panel is all dry, I can add this to my card base. And I just love how those gold splatters catch the light and give you a shimmery, starry sky. And then I'm adding some foam squares to the back of my sentiment. I'll place that along the bottom where I had it set earlier. You can see here how that paste allows you to see still the shape of the moon, especially on that cloud on the left. And then I'm adding my already colored bats from Fangtastic Friends. Now I did add some foam squares to the back, but I added some dots of liquid glue to my foam squares after I removed their backing papers, just because I am putting these over top of that texture paste, and I want to make sure that it sticks down really well. So just a dot of glue on each of them. and then it will hold to that textured surface. I actually did a dot of glue on all of these as well on this third one, but I didn't really need to because he's not overlapping any of the clouds. He's up here at the top. And then I also have some of the little stars from this stamp set as well. I've just sprinkled those around. I'm going back through and adding just a little dot of glue and dropping them back in the place where I wanted them. And then finally, I wanted to add a little bit more glitter. So I'm adding some Stardust Stickles to the top of my little clouds, just right on top of that texture paste. And then I'm going to add some to the stars as well. And then here is my finished card. I just love that inky sky. I love that moon stencil. It's so much fun. And those clouds and these purple bats and all that shimmer and shine. Super cute.
I just love this card, Shari. I love the texture on the clouds and that beautiful glow on the moon. And next up, we have some incredible cards by the design team. And first up, we have a card by Elena that is just so cute. I love that blue sky with those stenciled clouds. This card by Audrey is just gorgeous. I love how she stencils her sky and how it ink blends into nothing at the bottom. Here, Kara uses the full moon die and has a beautiful coloring technique on it, and I just love those die cut bats. This magic picture changer by Maureen is absolutely brilliant. You have the hanging bat with his wings in, and as you pull the tab, he spreads his wing. Isn't that the cutest thing? I can't wait to make a card just like this one. This is the card by Grace that inspired us to make ours today, and you can see that beautiful inked background that she created. Oh, I love it. This is a card by Megan featuring our new interactive die that we're going to be introducing tomorrow. And as you can see, that cute little bat just pops up into the scene. I love that Callie's ink sky makes her moon look like it's actually glowing. And I love the bats flying over the moon too. And then here, Melissa used the platform pop-up with the bats flying in it. And I think this is so adorable. I love that Elise used our brand new birch tree stencils as a cool scene for these adorable bats. And then here, Kara used the trick or treat with a beautiful metallic technique, and those cute little bats are showing off the sentiment. This card here by Mindy is so gorgeous, and I love that she used that outside-in stitch detail that the full moon die has to create a really cool look on her card. And then here are the cards by Tammy that inspired us to make ours, and oh my goodness, that beautiful purple clouds and the green sky with the white ink clouds are just stunning. I love how Shari colored her bats in with green on this awesome mini Slimline card, and the boo to you is such a cute sentiment. And then this card by Lynette is so gorgeous. I love the inking she did in her cool, spooky night sky. And then here you can see that she's combined the bats with our brand new Simply Celebrate Fall at the bottom to create a really cute card. And then this card by Letitia is just stunning. Those clouds that she inked in the background just blew me away. So we cannot wait to see what you guys create with these products, so make sure to share it with us. Thank you so much for watching today, and I hope you have an absolutely amazing day. Bye!